The Tamron 35-150 f2 to f2.8 is definitely not a brand new lens. It's been around for quite a while. But despite not being new, it's still quite unique, and it's arguably the most flexible lens that you can purchase for professional use. Now, I've been using this lens for almost a year now, and although this was not my daily driver, the lens is too big and too heavy to be a daily driver for everyone, when it comes to professional use, this lens comes with me all the time. In those scenarios, my setup is A7R5 with this big boy and the A7CR with the Sony 16-25 f2.8, which you can find the review over here, or here, I reviewed that a few months ago. Unless a specific event requires the use of the 28-45 Sigma f1.8, which comes with me all the time, even as a backup lens, this is my go-to setup, and this setup has provided me with the flexibility that I want and the image quality that I need. So I'm really happy, and as you've seen from the initial slideshow, I've been using this lens for pretty much everything you can possibly think of. Sport events, professional sport events, concerts, weddings, other type of events, anything you can think of, portraits, professional portraits, studio portraits, everything you can think of, I've been using this lens. And this lens has provided me with great result. I was also able to shoot some limited wildlife thanks to the possibility that I have with my Sony a7R5 to go APS-C, so this becomes a 225 f2.8 equivalent. It's not super long, it's not a wildlife lens anyways, but this lens is pretty flexible. Now, this video is not meant to be a technical review. There's plenty of those around, the lens is not new, there's no reason to go over and over again on stuff that you've seen already around. That's not what this video is all about. This video is about my user's experience after 1 year with this lens. And this lens is my unsung hero. I don't talk about this lens that much here on the channel, but this lens does a lot of the heavy lifting for what I do in my real life. So this video is meant to be an homage to this lens and to the flexibility this lens has given me throughout this year of use. Now, as I mentioned, I purchased this lens. It's not a lens that was given to me. I purchased it with my own hard-earned money, and so I'm not sponsored by Tamron. I assume Tamron doesn't even know that I exist, so no money has changed. And however, this video has a sponsor, and that sponsor is K&F with their crazy summer sales and Prime Day deals that are upcoming pretty soon. So go check their promotional link in the description, and don't forget that you have a 15% discount with the discount code that you see down here. If you were looking at something that they produce, just go buy it now. They have crazy deals. Now, with lenses, it's usually a matter of first impression, something that catches your attention the moment you start using them, and then you fall in love with the lens. Those things just click, and you cannot stop using a lens. When I got into the Sony ecosystem, I chose to do that, not necessarily for the sensor. I don't care about the full frame sensor. If you've been following this channel, you probably know that. I don't care. But what drove me into the Sony ecosystem is the availability of lenses, either from Sony or from third party like Tamron, Sigma, Viltrox, and all those other manufacturers that are there producing Sony lenses for Sony E-mount. And one of the lenses that was in my radar was this lens because as a rational thinking, knowing myself, knowing the way I wanted to shoot, I always want to have two cameras and two lenses and do 99% of what I do, 100% if possible, in a professional environment, of course, with those two cameras. I don't like swapping lenses that much. And so going with this lens and the 16-25 seemed to be the most rational decision that I could make. The first set of pictures that I took with this lens when I got it right out of the box turned my rational thinking into irrational love for this lens. They were not professional pictures. They were just pet portraits in my backyard. But I felt immediately in love with those because of this lens's rendering of those scenes. Smooth bokeh, nice sharp images, but not overly sharp, nice highlight roll-off. Everything you can possibly ask for a professional grade lens was there. And it was there during the first picture that I took. That sealed the deal for me, and I knew I was gonna love this lens from that moment on. Now let me get you a piece of advice because I got burned when I started using this lens at the beginning, because I purchased this lens new almost a year ago. The lens was not new at all, so I thought I'm on the latest firmware. Well, just double check that your lens is on the latest firmware. Whether you get it new or used, double check that the lens is on the latest firmware. I believe it's 5.0 as of today, just double check that, because I was wrong. Boy, I was wrong. I was still on firmware 1.0, and despite the incredible image quality that I was getting out of this lens, I was getting frustrated with the autofocus that I was getting with this lens. It was not nearly acceptable. It was very unreliable, especially at the minimum focusing distance. It was impossible to get the focus right. And I started questioning whether my specific lens had an issue or not. It took me months to realize that I was on a super old firmware. Once I updated it to the latest one, the lens changed. The lens's autofocus system changed. It was a night and day difference. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. The Sony 2270 f4 is a much more reliable lens, especially when it comes to tracking. Other Sony professional lenses are more reliable and faster. There's no doubt about that. But on the other hand, once you get this on the latest firmware, you get autofocus that is good enough to get you the results that you want. I could shoot pro-grade cycling race, pro-grade basketball games, and yes, I miss some shots here and there, but I believe that is unavoidable with every lens because sometimes the face detection goes where it shouldn't be going or something like that. But for the most part, the lens was spot on. The only issue that I see with this lens, despite being on the latest firmware, is that when you're tracking something that is coming fast towards you, the lens's autofocusing motors are not quite fast enough to track that object. If you find yourself in that type of scenario, maybe you may want to look at other lenses, but unless this is your main thing, you can definitely leave with this below par performance when it comes to the autofocus. Now, speaking of weaknesses, the only big weakness that you have with this lens is the resistance to flare. Whenever the sun hits the front lens from a specific angle, the flare is pretty dramatic. I find myself in a situation where I had to work around that to get the shot that I wanted because the flare was just too much. Now, I believe Tamron has gotten better with the newer lenses that they have, so maybe in a version 2 of this lens, they're gonna get that fixed. But for now, with this lens, you need to take that as part of your evaluation of the lens. If you shoot against the sun, against bright light sources all the time, maybe look elsewhere. If you don't, and if you love to have, you control your life or your light, or you usually shoot with the light outside of the frame, then this is not going to be an issue at all. Now, I was fortunate enough to test and use the Sony 50-150 f2. You're going to find the review over here. And that lens is probably the closest competitor to this Tamron 35-150. If you take the Samyang twin of this lens, I believe it's a twin. I don't know if they have the same optical design, but they kind of look like the same lens. Samyang has 35-150 f2 to f2.8. But if you take that out, the only other competitor to this lens is the Sony 50-150. And that lens is definitely better because it's f2 constant rather than f2 to f2.8. And that lens is better with flare, although it's not perfect. And the autofocus is better on the Sony than it is on the Tamron. But on the other hand, the Tamron costs less than half the price of the Sony, way less than half the price. Sometimes you can find it for a third of the price of the Sony. But more importantly, the Tamron goes to 35 millimeters. That moderate wide angle capability compared to the 50 millimeters that you get out of the Sony make a huge difference in the way you can use these lenses, at least for my usage scenario. Because to me, what I like to do is I like to have my main camera, my main lens being the A7R5 with the 35-150, and that covers the vast majority of my shots. Then when I actually need a super wide shot, I take the other camera and I start using that camera. If I had the Sony 50-150 and the 16-25, or to shorten the gap, the 16-35, the fact that I have the gap between 35 and 50 is gonna make me use the second camera way more than I use it right now. Because by being limited at 50 millimeters with the Sony, you cannot shoot moderate wide angle shots. And that, for the way that I shoot, makes a huge difference. It kind of cuts a huge part of the flexibility that I need because of that. It's easy to go from 35 to 100, 35 to 85, 35 to 150 with one lens, because you may go shooting. Let's just say you're shooting on a wedding. You're shooting a table. They want a picture all together. You go to 35. You go a couple of steps back, and you get all the frame. And then, if you want to zoom in on some of the people, you just can zoom in. When you're limited to 50, you need to go a lot back with your feet, and sometimes you have obstacles. You have other people around. Someone gets in the frame. It's a difference that may sound negligible, but it's actually not. And while we're on the topic of flexibility, I was actually surprised at the performance that I got with the Tamron in the video department. I don't use this lens for video a lot, but when I was shooting a wedding with my brother, I was fairly surprised about the fact that I could slowly zoom in and not lose focus. Now, this doesn't mean that the lens is parfocal, because it's not, but it's not dramatically shifting focus as you zoom in. And that allows you, together with the continuous autofocus, to have reliable shots and to be creative if you want to slowly zoom in into an object, if you want to go from wide to a detail, or the other way around, start from a detail and then zoom back. I was not expecting that type of performance. I didn't even check when I purchased the lens because I didn't think I was interested in it. But once I started using it, it made a lot of a difference. So even from a video perspective, it's pretty good. The autofocus has the same performance that you have on photos. And so, as you can probably tell, I'm definitely in love with this lens. I know it's got some shortcomings here and there, but I'm still in love with this lens. And despite all the new amazing lenses that have been launched throughout the last 2-3 years since when this lens got launched first, I still consider this lens almost a must-have for events, wedding, portraits, and stuff like that. It's just that good of a lens. It is unfortunate that this lens is only available for Sony and Nikon. But if you're either in Sony or Nikon, in your wedding or portrait photographer, if you do events, if you do anything that requires you to be flexible with your lens setup, I would strongly recommend you to give a look at this lens. This lens still today is one of the best lenses that you can purchase for that type of scenario. Either used or new. I know the Sony version costs less and I got this for a pretty good price, so I went for it right away. Just give it a look. Even if you're a prime shooter for the most part, this lens may change the way you're thinking about the way you shoot. Now I want to know, what about you? Do you have this lens? Are you interested in this lens? If you have it, how do you find it? If you don't have it and you're interested, what do you want to know? What are your questions that I may have not answered during this video? I'm really curious about what you guys think about this lens. Also, I have it for Sony, but I want to know if you're shooting in Nikon. I want to know how you find that lens for Nikon as well. That is it for today. Grazie, ciao, and I'll see you in the next one.